All right. I'm really excited about the guest I have here on the Damn Black Attack podcast. Welcome to RGN, Mr. Ben Sheehan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So Ben, you wrote two awesome books that I'm going to read that I would have read before you came on, but I wanted to get you on before the election because the stuff you've written about is so pertinent to the time we're living in. I was like, got to have this now. And I saw you were on Bill Maher last week, which was amazing. Awesome. Congratulations. You were great on the show.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. I love Bill Maher's show. I never miss an episode of Bill Maher. I think it's a great show. And so being on that, I mean, I feel like, huge accomplishment. It's a gold standard, bro. Good job.
Thank you. It feels weird. I grew up watching Politically Incorrect. I was that cool in middle school. So it's been a full circle experience.
I just like Bill's show because I feel like the thing I feel about his show is that, and I mean, maybe you can confirm this, is whether you agree with him or not, they're having longer form discussions on television than happens on any other show. It doesn't feel like it's like, here's your time, go. This is the only, like, not a tight produced television show, which I personally dig, maybe because, I'm a podcaster.
No, I like it because, you see like people get on the show and then they have their talking points. And then after about like 5 to 7 minutes, they've run out of their talking points. And then it's just like no one's prepared. So it does feel authentic after the first like 5 to 10 minutes, at least of the panel, it kicks in. And it's just like people's honest opinions. Like they get their, like rehearsed points out of the way.
Right. You didn't have to deal with any of the, since it was COVID era, you don't have that full crowd where you have to deal with the huge applause if you just say Trump is orange on that show. If you just go, like if you just call Trump and call him like Cheeto Man or say he has small hands, and they would have just gone, you'd have a basically like an applause break.
I mean, it's it's not exactly a crowd full of people that disagree with you politically when you go on that show.
No. But anyway, so you wrote these two amazing books, and they're called OMG, WTF, Does the Constitution, WTF, because it's like, what the fuck, does the Constitution actually say? A non-boring guide to how our democracy is supposed to work. And OMG, WTF is gerrymandering, a journal for concerned citizens. And like, these are two topics that I bring up on this podcast all the time in my RGN dome, admitting I'm regular, being like, what are we going to do about this document, this old document that we follow? And what are we going to do about gerrymandering, which to me is just the equivalent of cheating? So like, wait, first off, I mean, Ben, did you have you worked at Funny or Die? You had a comedy background?
Yeah, I worked at Funny or Die for 4 years. I was an executive producer at the website, and I ran the talent relations department. So basically, it was my job to beg celebrities to do videos without being compensated financially.
Well, there was a time where they would gladly do it.
Yeah,
I was.
It got harder as it went along.
Yeah, I was in a movie with Johnny Depp for Funny or Die.
I was in that briefly as well, and I also I was in the wedding scene, and then I produced or I should say co-produced the Kenny Loggins theme song to the movie.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
And the music video, which was a real trip.
Yeah, but Ben, it's cool that you worked on I didn't even know you wrote these books because we hung out. I mean, in the old times, 2019 or early 2020, I don't even know at this point. Pre-pandemic, we were at our mutual friend's house for the Curb Your Enthusiasm premiere.
Right.
He had a huge. You think about that party. That party, he had his house is like, it's a nice house, but like he had over 100 people in his house.
It'll be 2028 before anyone has a crowd like that at a house again. I mean, we're way off from like that sort of like. Well, I mean, I should say, I guess parts of the country are still doing that, but I can't see myself walking into a house with that tight of a crowd in the foreseeable future.
Right, like you think about like our minimal relationship, it wouldn't even exist at all in the COVID era.
Right,
we wouldn't have met at a party. We sat down. I was like, "Oh, you're engaged to my friend Jackie, who is hilarious and awesome," and I was like, "Oh, well." Cool. I met a cool guy. Like, I'm not going to be able to meet cool guys anymore.
I think I would say that's the biggest tragedy. I mean, forget the deaths and the cases. It's, not meeting cool guys is just like, how do you make, male adult friends? It's hard.
Absolutely. And you know, because of this pandemic, I feel like we didn't get to the fact that you know about gerrymandering and the Constitution, which I need to know about. But are your books on Amazon, by the way? Because I got so many Amazon Audible credits. I mean, they're messaging me every day like you're gonna lose your credits. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta start reading. Uh,
You are covered on Amazon and Audible with my books.
all right,
Yes.
good. All right, so Ben, let's talk about the stuff. We're like what 4 days away from an election right now, 5 days away
Right.
from this election right now. Um, but like the election is an interesting thing. Like I do agree this is the most important election. Biden has to win, but like we still have these two issues which you wrote about, like gerrymandering and the Constitution, and and like how archaic a lot of the elements of the Constitution are, and how our democracy right now is like seems so tribal that it seems like you can't really get anything done. My question to you is very simple. It's just like, in your opinion, are we fucked? Like, is America fucked? I mean, like, can we actually bounce back from this level of difference?
I, oh man, I would say that if we don't all participate at the level that it seems like we're participating, like going forward, not like this is a spike, but if this is an aberration and we go back to tuning out and not paying attention to down ballot races and who our representatives are at the local level, then I would say we are fucked. But if we maintain this level of participation going forward, I think that we have a chance to correct things.
Okay, because like, okay, so I'm gonna start and from my loose understanding, and if I say something that's off, you correct me. It's fine. But okay, so the big issue right now is, um, is like gerrymandering is a huge issue, right? And from my understanding of that, is that something that the Supreme Court can control?
Sort of. So
Okay,
really how it's controlled is our state legislatures. So our state senators
right.
and state representatives, every 10 years, they redraw the lines in our state. And that's how it works in 2/3 of states. So about a third of states have different ways of doing it. They have like a committee of non-legislative politicians, like maybe it's like the attorney general in the state is on the commission, or the secretary of state is on the commission. And then a few states do it as independent redistricting committees, where it's just like random people in the state. And so it's like a group of,
Right,
Republicans, Democrats, and independents. Like that's what they do in California. It's like 14 random people. You just apply to be on this committee.
right.
And then you redraw the lines for 10 years. But in most states, it's the state
So I could do
legislature.
that. I
You
could
could
just make,
absolutely, yeah, you
hey,
could
I'm a
apply.
wrestling podcaster. I feel like I should have a hand in gerrymandering.
Yeah. Yes. You can fill it out at the California, I think it's called the California Redistricting Commission website, and you just apply, and then they pick 14 people every 10 years.
Right.
So they,
Is gerrymandering a I'm sorry I interrupt you, but is gerrymandering a problem in like California?
it used to be, it actually used to be gerrymandered to favor Democrats. And throughout the
Ah.
1980s, it was Democrats screwing over Republicans. And actually, Arnold Schwarzenegger, that was his cause, was to establish an independent redistricting commission. In my home state of Maryland, Democrats,
Not to save John Connor.
not to say John.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had that off. Okay, sorry.
I mean, it did both. Maybe John Connor's on the redistricting commission. I don't know. I don't know what the guy's doing. So in Maryland, in my home state, it's also gerrymandered to hurt Republicans. But most states right now are controlled by Republicans, so they're hurting Democrats by disenfranchising them.
That's so interesting. That's like something I'm really trying to do. I'm trying to like I watch. I'm like a news junkie, right? Which is like a problem because I know I need to get my news from better, more independent sources. Because like if all the news I've ever taken in, gerrymandering is a Republican problem, and that's it. Like it almost like Democrats don't gerrymander.
Well, in the last 10 years, I mean, Republicans did a bad job in terms of like hurting our democracy, but did a really good job at gerrymandering in 2010 and 2011. These guys, these like Republican strategists basically made a pitch to their donors and said, hey, for 25% of the price of getting a Republican elected to the House, why don't you donate that a quarter of that money to state legislative races around the country? Those people draw the lines and can ensure those people get reelected for 5 straight elections. And so that's what they did. And they ended up flipping a ton of state legislatures and drawing the lines, and it worked. And they got a huge swing and took over the House and state legislatures around the country. And it was like incredibly effective, well-executed plan and screwed over Democrats who were too busy, rejoicing about Obama's victory to pay attention to the midterm elections.
Wow, that's almost like feels like a Bond movie or something. Like that's like the villain, like the Dr. Evil like master plan of like
it even has a Bond villain name. It was called Red Map.
Oh right,
and it was called it was short for Redistricting Majority Project.
Oh yeah, see that's a term that like I hear on the news and then I've regurgitated at parties like to seem like I know what I'm talking about, but I have no idea. I'm like, it's the red map, and then I walk away. Yeah, I don't want any follow up questions.
And they're like, that guy's amazing. We should listen to his podcast.
I could be at a party. I could really, with my improv training and the amount I absorb from the news, I can really like come in and people be like, this guy knows his shit. But I really know nothing. Especially when you come on.
Which means you have a very bright future in cable news.
I would kill it on cable news.
You
know
would.
What else I would have killed it? I would have destroyed Trump on the debate stage. Like, I feel like we would. I mean, I'm from the same like place as him. You know what I mean? A lot less privileged. I shared a bunk bed throughout all the way through high school. I didn't get $1 million to start a biz, but like Biden, I was up there. I was like, come on, Biden, bro. Like, just I would love it. I would love to debate Trump. I mean, he would do a good job. He would yell at me, and I would open the door way too much for his aggression. But
right.
Anyway, what are we talking about here? Yeah. So you're saying redistricting and gerrymandering, it's a big problem. But like, okay, so the big question is, and I know, I guess I'm speaking about the general election, which it seems to be like you already said, down ballot. This is not focusing on that. I feel like a lot of attention goes on the presidential race, and maybe people should be focusing more local. I guess that's a question to you. Do you think, like, basically, does local stuff affect your life way more to the point where they blow out the presidential election? Or in modern times, we've now hit, like, top of the ballot is so divided that actually it matters that much?
I think local has always been more – local and state have always been more important than federal. And really, these days, anytime – I mean, yeah, there have been some landmark, incredible federal laws like the Voting Rights Act, which is now weakened thanks to the Supreme Court. The Civil Rights Act. I mean, there have been incredible laws that have made people's lives better at the federal level, but they're few and far between. Congress is really becoming a lot more performative than ever. It's people just like auditioning for, cabinet positions like in their committee hearings and hoping that like they go viral and that they can raise money. I mean, it really is like a performance thing. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Ben, that's like, that wasn't even where I'm going with this, but like that is, I feel this way so much. Like I'll watch like any of these hearings, like one of these high profile hearings. And I'm like, I cannot believe that the way that this, like, let's say like the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation hearing, like when they go like, all right, you get like 5 minutes, you get 5 minutes. I can't believe this is how we operate, where it's like you come up there and you do your own little book report, right? And it's it's more about the performance than actually asking questions, to the point where if you ask a question, first off, she doesn't answer, but separate from that, there are times where, someone's on the stand and they have to answer, and a lot of times they don't care about the answer, because they're like, in this time, I need to get this full thing out. Like, AOC does this a lot. I see, like, videos of AOC, and, like, I know she's thinking, like, listen, I like a lot about AOC. I'm not, she's a very modern politician, but I'm saying she knows she's being filmed for the internet, so she doesn't care about actually getting an answer to her question. It's more of a pointed question. It's more, I'm not saying this right. Like, it's more performative, like you're saying. It's like, she'll say, she'll be like, do you think it's okay that like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened? I find it sick. What's your answer to that? And then they don't actually get to respond.
Well, I think that there are I actually think she does a really good job on committee, and it's like really substantive and nuanced. I think Katie Porter at the House does a really good job on committee, but keep in mind that members of the House are constantly running for re-election, which means they are constantly fundraising. In fact, half of their day is walking across the street from the Capitol and sitting in a cubicle and calling people for money.
Well, that's what I love about someone like an AOC, because she's openly like, I spent so much of my time trying to raise money. Like they call that and Bernie, they call that out, being like, I have no choice but to raise money all the time. Yeah.
That's why you see so many people performing on committee, is because if that goes viral, people will donate to their campaign. Like it's
Performing on
all.
committee. There's an expression for that, Ben. I
It
love that.
is. I mean, it's sad. I mean, it is. It also does serve a function. Like, it is important for the public to know,
Mhm.
what when somebody's being called before a particular committee, it's important for that person to be heard and grilled. I mean, these are our representatives working for us who are acting on our behalf to, like, get to the bottom of something. But it has become performative because of social media and because it's so tied to fundraising. And in the Senate, I think you even see the discrepancy when people are running for reelection or like up that year.
Right.
They get like really into it, whereas people who like just got elected, it's like they don't need to waste the energy.
I've
They
seen
don't need
that.
to do
I've seen when it's like midterms for Congress people, you could tell if they're up for reelection or not.
Right. Yeah.
You could tell on their vibe. But there was like, God, there's so many tangents to go on here. Yes, that is true. The performative aspects of it in some ways are good because, look, we have to embrace where we are now and how it works, and going viral is a currency. So, like, what are we going to do about it? Why would that not invade our government? All right, I'm going to take a step back and just my big question. But the money thing. So, like, and this ties into gerrymandering. It's all about money. Am I wrong to say that and this is just basic understanding, this is just a consumer of media seeing like, all right, what do I always hear about year after year? Now I'm in my 30s. I've been through a couple of general elections. I see how this goes, right? I'm like, is the biggest problem Citizens United?
I mean, it's one of them. It's huge. It really is. It really has destroyed a lot of the dialogue in this country, and I think that because of the opportunity that social media has given media outlets and publishers and advertisers to spread their info quickly, that unlimited bucket of money goes really, really far.
Right. So you could put as much money, what do they call it, dark money?
Mm-hmm.
They can put as much money as people want into our politics, essentially, right?
Well, into super PACs. And so you can't coordinate with a candidate. You can't coordinate with a campaign. But, if I don't talk to you, if you and I never speak, and you and I don't communicate with anyone on your campaign, and you're running for, you're running for president, I could start a super PAC and spend unlimited money either for or against you, meaning just like buying ads, free speech, saying, whatever I want to say about you, as long as I'm not talking to you or coordinating with you, then I can do that.
Right. Wow. It's insane. Okay. So, all right. In terms of just gerrymandering as a thing, we say that applies to the Supreme Court. So I'm just speaking at the top level for now. I know like it gets tricky if you go down ballot or not, get into the districts, but like, so is there any chance we could ever get to a place in your mind where it's just the popular vote? Like we just get rid of gerrymandering entirely and we just decide our elections based on popular vote?
Are you talking about the Electoral College or gerrymandering?
No, well, I'm tying that's true. I'm tying them together, but I mean, you're getting to the specifics of it. But I'm just saying, gerrymandering, in my mind, gerrymandering wouldn't even matter if you were going by the popular vote, right?
Well, it still would, because gerrymandering is how we elect our members of the U.S. House and state legislatures. So
I meant for president. I was saying at the top of the ticket. So like if your vote, tell me where I'm missing this, but I'm saying if it's just popular vote, it wouldn't matter what your district is and whatnot, right? Like Hillary Clinton would have won by 3 million, right?
It wouldn't. Well, yeah. I mean, what you're talking about, I think, affects 2 states. It affects Maine and Nebraska, because Maine and Nebraska, they do 2 electoral votes for the winner of the popular vote in the state, and then they do 1 electoral vote for each for the winner of each congressional district. Right. So you can, candidates can split states. You could win, one of Maine's congressional districts, and the other candidate could win the other and also the statewide. So it would be 3-1. So you could split votes. So if you did it like those 2 states do across the country, then gerrymandering would affect the Electoral College. But switching to a popular vote right now, because it's done statewide, and winner take all, then it doesn't matter how badly gerrymandered the districts are. It wouldn't affect the Electoral College in 48 states, but it definitely affects the representatives in the House and representatives in state legislatures.
Right. Okay. I guess I was just thinking like, hey, you get rid of gerrymandering, and then all of a sudden everyone's vote is just 1 for 1, and it doesn't matter where I live. And I wasn't thinking about like Congress. I know districts. It's based on here's your congressman and how the district is. So then we wouldn't be able to, for the Congress, obviously you still have to have these districts set, right?
Right.
But is there a fair way to set districts? Does that even exist?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, the whole idea behind it is not to cheat. I mean, redistricting is a normal good thing. Gerrymandering is the problem. So just drawing the districts every 10 years, because like
See,
people,
I thought gerrymandering is districting. Like I think like
it's a
that's
type
a
of
little,
redistricting.
Okay, gerrymandering is like a sleazy. Sorry to go back. I'm laying this out. People listening to this are not gonna even. They're gonna know what I know. Gerrymandering is like a sleazy way to redistrict.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Exactly.
Okay.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, I mean, you can look at the population in your state. You know, people move around the state, people move into the state, people move out of the state, people die. So how do you make sure that every district is fairly drawn, like relatively equally? So the idea is you take the census data and then you look at it and you say, okay, we're going to draw it. Okay, a lot of people moved out of this district, so we're
Right.
going to redraw the lines here. So everyone's fairly represented. They're equal in size. The problem is when you draw it so that all the, Republicans or Democrats are like concentrated in one district, so all the other districts go to the other party, or you draw it so that like one party is split like a little bit throughout, just enough so they're always going to be a minority of every district, and so they never win.
Right.
That's called pack. The first one's packing. The second one's cracking. So like that's the manipulative problem.
So like right, gerrymandering is basically like drawing the districts in a way that is drawing it in a way that is towards your liking or whatever. So right.
Right.
So like you would carve out this Democratic area so this person could win, right?
Exactly.
If you're red.
Right. And the other way around. That's partisan gerrymandering. You can also gerrymander based on race. I mean, that's the Constitution. The Supreme Court has said that the 15th Amendment, you can't gerrymander and put all the black people in the state in one district so that, that one presumably goes Democratic and the others go for Republicans. I mean, there are states that do that or try to do that, and
right.
It's been interfered. And the Supreme Court has said you can't gerrymander based on people's race. That's unconstitutional. It's a violation of the Constitution. But there's nothing in the Constitution to explicitly prohibit gerrymandering because of political party.
Right.
But
it's like the Air Bud like thing where it's like, hey, like there's nothing that says you
right,
can't have a dog on the team, right?
Right.
And that's what
Bill that's exactly right.
Right. That's kind of what Bill was talking to you about, where he's like, there was this like, this was like a lot unsaid in our laws that you're like, okay, for a while we're like, hey, here are the rules we play by because we're all patriots, but that's going to have to go. Like
exactly.
now we have to lay this stuff
You got to start
clear.
saying the obvious thing out loud. Yeah.
Right.
And writing it down.
So why is, okay, so as it pertains to like a Supreme Court, I've been saying this on the podcast because, okay, so the Supreme Court's now 6-3 conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it fair to say that conservatives are pro gerrymandering? I mean, I know that's a way loose way of saying it, but is it have to do with the fact they're like, hey, I'm a textualist, right? They always go, I'm a textualist, and I'm like, oh, okay. See, I interpret textualist with like Amy Coney Barrett's like, I'm a textualist. Scalia, I'm a textualist, right? I interpret that as like being like, you don't veer from text, which means like you're not a thinker. Like that's how my brain goes, which is like, and you're not modern. And then that ties into a lot of people's, unfortunately, religious belief, which come from old texts that you just try to follow, and also that makes me think that you don't realize that being a textualist is kind of a lot of times not even possible because you're interpreting text that barely makes sense in modern day, and right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a slight difference between being an originalist and being a textualist. Originalist is like, what was the intent behind them writing this? And text is like, what did they actually write? Forget the intent. What does it say? And what's interesting about textualism is like it actually has worked recently in a pretty progressive way. I mean, Neil Gorsuch was the person who wrote the deciding opinion in making sure that you can't be fired because you're transgender. Right. He said that you can't separate transgender status or sexual orientation from sex. Like they're inherently linked. And so therefore, any state that doesn't protect people from being fired because they're gay or trans, that's unconstitutional. So textualism was actually used like to expand people's rights in that regard. But it also can be used the other way. And originalism, I just think is a total crock of shit. I mean, it's just
What's
like
originalism mean? I mean, because it sounds
originalism is just
attractive
like
to me. I want to
right.
be like, yo, what's up? I'm an originalist. What's up, Dan Black? I'm an originalist.
It's like, what were they thinking in 1787 when they wrote this?
That's
or
awful.
Like,
that's not what I thought.
No, and also it almost always leaves out the amendments. Like we've had 27 amendments, so like the whole like originalist idea. Usually they're talking about 233 years ago. They're not talking about the amendments, which are just as much a part of the Constitution as anything else.
Right. Yeah. Oh, okay. So being a textualist is not as bad as I thought.
In my opinion, being a textualist is not as bad as being an originalist.
Ben, your opinion is going to be my opinion. Okay, I just want to let you know.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I know you're wearing a red shirt. I have a blue shirt. I know you're extremely Republican guy, but I'm saying, no. I'm just kidding. But no, because you. Listen, like anybody, I could be. You know what you're talking about. You wrote the book. I go, all right, sounds good. I don't know anything. All right, sounds good. But so like. Okay, so in terms of the Supreme Court, right? So they say, it's 63, right? It's more conservative now. They're talking about court packing, right? And I'm trying to get my opinion on court packing. I guess first off, do you think if the Democrats win, are you willing to make that? Give me your opinion there. Should they court pack? And then my next part of that B is if they do, is that something that I heard this one time and I haven't heard it again? Is this the kind of thing that Republicans actually will not be able to come back from? Meaning, if the court goes super, if the court becomes more liberal, right? And they do away with, they start cracking down on gerrymandering and cracking, having people's votes matter more. And based on this country is more liberal than we vote because of the Electoral College. If they do any kind of changes to the Electoral College, is that true? Would the modern Republican Party be like shifted?
You're saying if the Democrats add Supreme Court justices and do away with the Electoral College, will it
I said 40 things is what I did. I said 40 things. I said 40 things. But when I said 40 things. Listen, I'm not Bill Maher, all right? But what I'm saying is that, okay. If I just I've heard that are you pro packing? I'll just ask you that.
So I think court packing it's not a real term, first of all. And the people who are using that are trying to make the argument that we should not add justices to the Supreme Court.
Right.
Congress can add justices to the Supreme Court whenever it wants. It could do it tomorrow if it wanted. It just has to pass a law. Yeah. That would have to be signed by the president or just pass a law with 2/3 of the members in each house. And then you don't need the president's signature. Right. But what that would entail, I mean, we've done this several times over the years, just not recently. So we started with 6 Supreme Court justices in 1789. And then we went down to 5, and then up to 7, and then up to 9, and then up to 10, and then back down to 9.
Right. So, and then I read a thing about FDR was trying to add 6 at one point. And that was a big thing
he just tried to get Congress to do it. He can't. Right. The president can't add justices. They can sign a law passed by Congress saying that. So I think he tried to get justices to add court, or tried to get Congress to add justices. But the thing to kind of consider with this is that the Supreme Court is supposed to be balanced. It's not supposed to be like one side or another. It's not supposed to be left. It's not supposed to be right. And the proof of that is the people who wrote the Constitution giving justices lifetime appointments under good behavior. So the idea behind that is that they're not running for re-election. They're not, beholden to partisan whims. They're not beholden to, what's trending on Twitter, which obviously didn't exist back then in its current state. So this is the idea of packing the court is not a real thing. You can add justices to balance it out, which if, it is too far to one side, whether that's left or right, I think it's healthy to do. This is supposed to be a group of people who don't have a partisan allegiance and just uphold federal laws and the Constitution. So the idea of court packing was, coined, that phrase was coined by people who didn't want there to be more justices. And so the word packing makes it sound like it's nefarious or under the table or illegal or something. And it's just sort of it's a phrase that's just being used to, make anyone who wants to balance out the court seem like they're cheating or something.
Right. So we think that it almost can be viewed as if the court is out of balance, it's the president's job to balance it.
Well, no, it would be Congress's job.
Oh,
Congress's job. Yeah.
Congress's job, yeah, because the president doesn't do it, but it would be the Congress's job to balance it out. Oh man, I just can't. It just feels like, like my brain goes crazy with the court. What do we call it? Adding justices. I won't even call it court packing because I go like, wow, like what are these rules we're following here? I'm like, here's the game. Here's how it's played. There's 9 justices, and that's the deal. And then you're like, oh, we add more. You're like, this feels like a slippery slope, especially given, frankly, the loose morals and the loose way the Republicans play the game nowadays.
Right.
I mean, they have no scruples. Let's just be honest. Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, you could see it in the most plain language possible what's going on with this jamming through Amy Barrett and then seeing them block Merrick Garland. Like that, that was the most, hey, we do what we got to do that I've ever seen,
Right. I mean, it's just about power. It's like not even about, it's almost ideology almost comes second. I mean, obviously they're intertwined, but it just feels like, right now, let's just say what it is. Like the demographic makeup of the United States is changing,
right.
And white people are quickly becoming a smaller majority. And pretty soon they're going to be a plurality of the entire country. In fact, I think under 30 is already a plurality of the entire country. White people under 30 are no longer a majority, certainly under 18.
Right.
So this really comes down to, the people who have traditionally held power wanting to hold on to power longer. And so by doing things like, putting more justices on the Supreme Court who who think a certain way, like the, numerically minority party, I mean, there are far more people who identify as Republicans as Democrats and independents combined than there do Republicans. And so I think it's just about trying to stay in power longer. But the Democrats used to do this. It really is like how can the party that doesn't have power right now try to find a way to solidify their power? And by power, I mean, don't have the votes if you were to let everyone vote. So like voter suppression, is a huge tactic.
Right.
The more people who turn out to vote, studies show it favors Democratic candidates. So if I'm a Republican, like I don't want everyone to vote. And people have said that out loud before. It's not a secret. We can talk about all these like voting techniques, voter suppression techniques, like exact match or, signature mismatch or use it or lose it, or all these tactics that are like administrative things. But it's just for people who are already in power to maintain that power. And to be honest, I don't even look at it as a partisan thing anymore.
Right. So it's not right. Yeah, because right. But with the voting, it's not like if the Democratic Party was in the position the Republicans are in, where if more people voted, it would be bad for them, then they wouldn't do this stuff.
I'd be curious to know, if turnout did hurt the Democratic Party, what would they do? Now, I do think there's like an underlying moral consistency with it where, there is a fundamental belief that, being able to vote is part of this country, even though we don't have a constitutional right to vote, which is odd. It is important for people to exercise their right to vote, but by putting obstacles in the way of people, and traditionally it's been people of color, it's been women, it's been young people, it makes it harder for those groups to vote. Then, the people in power are getting their power only by the people who actually are able to get to the ballot box.
Right. It's like if it feels like the modern day GOP, which I'll lazily just call the white GOP, like, that like you see that picture of just all the full presidential cabinet. It's all white.
Don't leave out Lil Wayne, the white GP and Lil Wayne.
Absolutely. Lil Wayne in there, 50 Cent for a day.
Kanye.
Yeah, Kanye's on his own ticket. But like those guys feel like they're playing this like losing game. Like they're on like borrowed time right now, just grasping at straws, And like that's what I'm saying is that like if there was some kind of way where people had actual representation in this country, everything would change like overnight, right?
Right. Yeah, and I do think that there are some, areas of growth for the Republican Party, specifically among, Latino, Latinx, Hispanic voters. Like it's not as clear cut as people tend to think. There are a lot of socially conservative Hispanic voters, and I think it almost feels to me like the Republican Party is like blinded by its own sort of homogeneity
Right.
of skin color that they can't even see like the growth area they have, because there are a lot of Hispanics who identify as Republican.
I
It's not that clear cut.
I completely agree, and you can use Trump as a perfect example of it, even though he's like his own beast. That is like he's almost like pointless to even study. I keep thinking about like how in like 50 years from now when they're trying to like teach kids about Donald Trump, the only way you could do that is through a video. I think, right? It would have to be just like you'd have to see this to believe this. You couldn't even write this guy on paper.
It's wild. It really is.
But like he even says things where I'm like, oh man, you're so like you easily could get the Latino vote or Latinx, which I had to Google the other day. To be honest, I didn't know what that was. I'd seen it for a long time. I'd seen like there's an X at the end, and I'm like, I don't know why. And then I was like, oh, I get that. Yeah, that makes. I took Spanish. That makes sense. That's my first time using that. I feel really progressive. But like, if they're, I agree with you. Like, if their messaging was stronger, because I had my grandmother. My step grandmother, my grandmother died when I was super young, and my grandfather remarried a Cuban woman. She was a Cuban refugee, and so my my grandmother growing up was a Cuban woman. I called her my grandmother. Like she was really important to raising me, and I could see she had completely different values. Like we were all Jewish. She literally wore a cross around her neck. She like prayed. She was Catholic, and so I could see there were things like she had different values. So I could see like my point is it's like it's not this like I think people have this blind thought in their head like, oh well, anyone who's a minority is Democrat, and you see like
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
and you're like I know that that's not the case,
Right.
I mean I was speaking to someone who was an immigrant who was saying that one of the big problems, someone who crossed over the border, and she was saying at one point like a big problem they have is people who actually are in America now and are citizens don't want other people coming in, which was like that like kind of blew my mind. That actually will like call and rat. I'm not saying this is a huge thing, but it's just a story I heard. Like actually would rat on people to ICE and stuff because they're like, oh well, you have to come here. You have to come here the right way. Interesting.
Right. No, and I feel like I'm the wrong person to hypothesize like the reasons for that, but it is true. You do see more conservative Hispanic voters closer to the border than you do in like cities throughout the country.
Right. I'm not even making. I'm just this is all like hearsay. I don't know. Again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I say that it's people have this two-dimensional view of people that's not true. So I'm just like the GOP. It's interesting that this party, and I think post-Trump, whether that's 4 years from now or 4 days from now, I do think we see like I think they're gonna have to have some kind of pivot in like a big change. I think this is their last hurrah of this version of the Republican Party.
We'll see, man. I don't know. I mean, there's so much that could go wrong between now and January 20th. It's just like it's staggering.
Right. So let me ask you something. So I saw Bill was asking you about this. So we were talking about the Electoral College, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying so the Electoral College is an actual like, how do I get on that? Can I be in the Electoral College?
Dan, I have some really good news for you.
Yeah.
You have all the qualifications under the Constitution to be an elector, to be a Supreme Court justice, to be the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President pro tempore.
Really? What are the qualifications?
None.
Being white? Oh, okay. All right. I was just checking. That's what Trump. I thought Trump said that. There's nothing. There's nothing.
Nothing.
So you're
a pulse? It doesn't even say that.
Wow. So you're saying like, how do they get this position? How do I get to be a member of the Electoral College?
Well, you'd have to, since you live in California, you would have to get the California a party, either the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, whichever party it is, to choose you as an elector for their party's nominee. And if their party's nominee were to win the popular vote in the state, you would get to go to Sacramento, the capital of California, and you would cast your electoral vote for president and one for vice president on December 14th.
Wow. And so you're saying that there's nothing stopping me from, they go, hey, all right, you have to vote for Biden because of that's what,
Well, no, I'm not. I'm pretty sure California, and don't quote me on this,
Okay.
but I'm pretty sure California has binding laws for electors, meaning that
Right.
you have to vote, but because it's each party's own slate, so each party picks their own people. So it's not
Right.
like it's rare to have faithless electors because the Republican Party is choosing people who have pledged they're going to vote for the Republican nominee if they win the election. Same thing for the Democratic Party. So it would be somebody, in California, it would be one of 53 people that the 55 people that the Republican Party has vetted that have promised to vote for Donald Trump. It would be very unusual for that person to not do that. Also, I'm almost positive that California has binding electoral laws, but 17 states don't have those laws, which means that if that person is free to vote for whoever they want without penalty. And several other states, at least a dozen other states, have a law against breaking with the popular vote and voting a different way, but there's no penalty and the vote still counts, which is why do you have a law if that you can still break the law and there's no penalty and what you did exists in the world?
That's like the air. That's like the Air Bud. That's an example of that. Right. That's like we didn't need such a logical law that like your vote would need to be binded or bound, but we do.
Right. It's all up to the state legislatures. Like they can do whatever they want. They can pass a law saying you got to follow the popular vote. They can say you don't have to follow the popular vote. They can say it's completely in the hands of state legislatures across the country, which is the same in most states with gerrymandering. So it's just the importance of these jobs. We just don't realize, like we don't read the rule book, and it's so crucial because they have a massive amount of power.
That's insane. Like, so you're saying like it's possible for Trump. Now, I'm not saying this is likely, but it's possible for Trump to like pay some of these guys off. Like his last line of defense is to pay these guys off to put in the vote for me where it's not bound.
Yeah, in 17 states you could do that, and then in a bunch of other states you could do it, and you would break a law, but you wouldn't be penalized, and the vote would still count. So yeah, it is possible.
Are any of those major swing states?
Yeah, a few of them are.
I don't know what you just said. You said Ohio. You said Florida.
So the ones where they don't bind their electors at all
can't be Florida. They don't do anything logical over there.
Well, the ones that don't bind their electors are 3 of them are swing states this year: Texas, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. And then 3 states that bind their electors, but there's no penalty for breaking that, and the vote still counts, are Florida, Ohio, and Wisconsin.
Wow, those are the prizes.
Those are 6 pretty key states, yes.
Wow. Oh, okay. If you're Trump, there's no question he at least threw that out there to someone.
I'm telling you, man.
If he knew enough.
It's the people around him. It's not him. He doesn't know this, but he's got smart people around him who are advisors. And like, this is my biggest problem with the Democratic Party is like, I talk about this on shows or podcasts and people are like, don't give them ideas. And like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you really think they haven't been planning for this for the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Like
it's
3
Roger
years.
Stone and Steve Bannon. These guys know everything.
The people who engineered RedMap and changed the makeup of Congress for a decade, you think they haven't thought this through? Like, it is so ridiculous. Like, it is one party, I think, has malintentions and has read the rule book, and the other one is like wants everything to be happy and wonderful, and like hasn't read any of the founding documents. Is what it feels like to me.
Wow. Yeah, because it's like the Democratic Party. It's like they got to play dirty. You got to fight fire with fire also.
Right. You should know the rule book. And it really is, this isn't the fault of President Obama, but this is the fault of the Democratic Party under President Obama, is because they had such a rock star celebrity at the leading, the party at the national level. And so that was where the money was coming in. Like, people were donating because they were psyched about Obama. And so they took their eye off of state legislatures and other quote unquote down ballot races, which are really super fucking powerful. Right. And like, this is the fault of the Democratic Party for sure. RedMap getting sidelined by that's their fault. So like, we need new Democratic Party leadership at in many states, definitely at the national level. And, I hope they've learned their lesson, but it really just goes to show that, by not understanding the founding documents, you don't know where the power lies, and it's easy to just chase money without a long-term strategy.
Right. So wait, who's got to go? Pelosi's got to go.
I'm not. No, I don't. I'm not going to name names.
I know
like,
you. All right, you.
She's
Pelosi's
also
got to go. Schumer's
well. She's not
go.
the. They're not the Democratic Party organization. I'm talking about like the strategy. I mean, yeah, they're involved, but it really is just like, where are we going to focus our efforts for fundraising? You know, and there are organizations focused on governors, focused on, state legislatures, focused on the House and the Senate. And it's just like, it's the same big rich people that donate every year. And it's just like, where do you get them to give money? And I just feel like where they get people to give money is not where the power is.
Right. Someone named Debbie Wasserman. I don't know who that is, but that's a name I've heard. Is that a name? That's a name. She's DNC
Debbie
chair?
Wasserman Schultz is a U.S. representative from Florida. Yes, and she's I believe she has an official role in the Democratic Party, or I think she used to be the chair. I'm not sure. I know she's not the chair anymore, but I'm not sure what her involvement is.
I remember because she's the one they were like, she screwed over Bernie, but she sounds like she's got a name like she could be my aunt or something. But
she might be.
All right. Because last thing I want to ask you about. I mean, I can ask you about a million things, Ben. You know so much. It's unbelievable. You got to check out Ben's books. And by the way, a fun fact about Ben's books, why I messed up reading them is because it's OMG WTF. So you think, what the fuck? But it stands for Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, Texas, Florida.
You nailed it.
Yes. Which are key states. What'd you say? Battleground states?
Yeah. That was my work in 2018 as I started this organization. So it was an acronym for those states in 2018. Going forward, it's just kind of how we feel. But I was active in Texas this year. I did a concert last night. Actually, I produced with Bun B from Underground Kings, Houston rap legend, a band called The Suffers from Houston, and a few other local artists. And it was at a polling place last night because last night in Houston, Harris County, they had 8 polling places open for 24 hours. So people went to the concert from 8:30 to 10:30, and then just like went and voted and hung out all night.
That's awesome, and that's how it should be.
That's how it should be. I agree.
That's how it should be. Voting shouldn't be so difficult. I find voting to be like kind of difficult for even me, and it's not difficult at all.
Right. It used to be a party. Like back in the 1800s, people would just like get whiskey and go to the polls and vote and hang out and like have parties. And so we kind of want to. It's up to the counties run their own elections, but I think we should bring that back. It should be like a social thing. It shouldn't be this like dry thing where you just like wait in an unair conditioned hallway to walk into a school gymnasium. Like get some fucking booze and food and like have a party and have Bun B
make it like
perform.
WrestleMania.
Yeah,
a great time. Party outside, tailgate. It should be voting tailgating should be a thing. Except that it would be fights. It wouldn't work. All right, so here we're getting close to the election. This is what I want to say. So this is one thing I don't understand because they're talking. All right, well, okay, now Amy Coney Barrett, she's in the Supreme Court, and they're like, well, the Supreme Court might have to decide on this election, and I'm seeing stuff like, all right, some states are deciding if your ballot, like Pennsylvania decided if your ballot is postmarked by Tuesday, then it'll still count if it comes like 3 days after or whatever. You know what I mean? Which is like. Listen, I mean, I worked in taxes for a long time. I have my CPA license. Like, you getting your taxes in. It's like that's why you get it there. You postmark it. That's standard practice in America. So to even hear that would be something that would not matter. That's a joke, And yeah, well, I'll let you respond to that.
No, I mean, it just goes again, not to just talk about state legislatures all the time, but like the people who make the voting laws in your state are your state legislature. And so under the Constitution, they have the power to, dictate the times, places, and manner of elections. So Congress can override that, but our elections are almost exclusively, run at the state level. Congress made Election Day a single day back in 1845, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. They passed the Voting Rights Act in 1965. So like there have been voting laws over time, but it's just state policies. So states can make their own decisions around, how elections run. If they want to do this many early voting days, they do this many early voting days. If they gotta have your ballot postmarked by the election, it can arrive later, then they can arrive later. If it has to be received by Election Day, it can be received by Election Day. But it's ultimately up to each state to make their own decision.
Right. And it just feels like some of this stuff is so it's like why this is so crazy? Like why is this not just so standardized, just voting? It's
Well, Congress could do that. They could do that. I mean they've tried recently to make vote by mail an option in every state and because of COVID-19, and it's still not. I mean, you can't use COVID-19 as an excuse in 5 states, including Texas, to vote absentee. So, the Congress has the power to do this, and it would take, passing a law and passing a bill in the Senate and the House and being signed by the president, and you could standardize all of this.
Right. So now they're saying, oh, well, the Supreme Court can decide to toss ballots and whatnot. Why are we tossing any ballots? And is that something we should actually be concerned about for Tuesday? Like that ballots are going to be, the Supreme Court's going to decide to toss a million ballots?
Well, I don't know if the Supreme Court is going to decide to toss a million ballots, but
Okay.
what I do think could happen is that there could absolutely be a court challenge around this election that rises up to the Supreme Court. But what you could say, or what you could see, is people need to pay attention for the 6 weeks after Election Day, because there's a date coming up on December 8th called the Safe Harbor date. Right. And what that means is that if there's a controversy in a state, like say a state, the state claims that million or thousands of people voted quote unquote illegally, or there were fake ballots being counted, or people voted more than once. They showed up to vote in person and cast a ballot, and they also voted absentee. Whatever it is, you can make a claim that there's a problem with the election for president in the state, and if the state legislature wants, they could appoint the electors a different way from the popular vote if they have a law on the books before Election Day, so November 2nd or earlier. Right. And as long as they act on that law by December 8th, they can appoint the electors a different way. So they could just choose the electors themselves. And if that happened in Pennsylvania, Georgia, or Texas, the electors, because they're not bound, wouldn't have to vote for the winner of the popular vote.
Oh, my God. So I guess my last question for you, similar to the "are we fucked" question, is like, how concerned are you about this election? How concerned are you about this election being fair?
I mean, I'll be really honest with you. I'm concerned about the election being fair. I'm also more concerned that there's going to be violence. I mean, I think that there could be people, harmed, hurt, killed, and I think we all sort of have this pit in our stomach about what's going to happen because the level of vitriol and what we're hearing about people with, guns showing up to polling places. And especially in the wake, it's not even just on election day. It's like the counting of the votes afterward, people showing up to county clerk offices with, intimidating people. So, I'm really worried about people's safety in this election. Wow. Of course, I'm worried about a fair election. But I just think that people need to be prepared and armed with the right information to make a decision, and obviously by November 3rd, but also to know what's going to happen, because there are opportunities to put pressure on your state legislators and to make sure that if they decide they want to go rogue and not vote for the winner of the popular vote in their state, like, they will not have a job come whenever they're up for re-election, and you're going to make their life living hell for the next 2 years or 4 years or however long they have.
Right. And, to that point, like, something that's giving me a little bit of comfort is, like, how you see Lindsey Graham being out fundraised right now, because you're like, all right, at least it's nice to see that there's a consequence for him being like a straight up liar, whether forget about your politics. It's like someone who was like, hey, you're an elected official and you want to set this precedent because you really believe in this precedent that before a presidential election, we shouldn't push through a Supreme Court justice, and you're like, the people should decide. And you're like, all right, I'll take your word for that. And then to see that doesn't matter at all, it's a complete lie, and that his opponent is out fundraising him by a mile, I feel like that's something that makes, I like seeing that there's actual consequences. People actually care. I don't know, I don't know if we'll lose, but I think that's something that comforts me. And obviously, the violence, I don't know. We're going to see. I feel like we're in this calm before the storm right now. It's kind of weird because it's like, I'm like a news junkie, and you could see them just repeating the same things over and over. They're polling, projecting. It's the same stuff, and they're basically like saying, hey, I'm saying, in the subtext of everything they're saying is like, we don't actually know. Here's what we're telling you this. But, like, is it like the next 100 days are going to be, I feel like, are going to be insane.
Yeah, I mean, polls aren't factoring in, militias showing up to polling places with, firearms. Like the polls don't reflect that. Polls don't reflect Alabama's, drivers, a DMV shutting down out of nowhere, statewide for at least a day, where people need to get the necessary IDs in order to go vote. I mean, there are lots of external factors that aren't reflected in polling. Polling assumes that people who have the intention of voting are able to actually vote. And I think we know in this country that that's not always the case. So it doesn't factor in voter suppression, doesn't factor violent intimidation. And I think it's just like, that's just the reality of where we are right now.
Yeah. Well, Ben.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. We're not going to solve it here, but I mean, dude, that was a really... that was really helpful for me. Thank you. That information. I'm going to check out your books, and thanks for coming on the pod. Well, I don't know. I'll check back in with you to see where we end up here. But keep up all this awesome work you're doing, man. I had no idea that we were hanging at that party that you were involved in all this stuff. It's unbelievable, and you wrote these books.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate the conversation and you having me on.
Yes. Tell Jackie I say hello. And make sure to check out Ben's books. OMG WTF Does the Constitution Actually Say? A non-boring guide to how our democracy is supposed to work. And OMG WTF is Gerrymandering, a journal for concerned citizens. All right, Ben, dude, thanks so much again.
Dude, thank you.
I'll see you soon. I'll see you in 2 years in person.
Yeah, seriously.
Bye, man.
See you, dude.